Hey, Chris Grove here, back at you with another video. Today, I want to do a tribute to Rob Reiner and random thoughts on Daycare. How are those two things related? They're not, but I just want to talk about them, so here we are. First up, Rob Reiner, and just want to talk about his filmography and what he contributed to Hollywood, and he really was a beloved director and actor in his earlier days, and even some in his later days as well. And I just want to talk about that for a little bit. The only thing I want to say about what actually happened, though, is that none of us are immune to chaos in the family. Whether you're just the average Joe or a successful Hollywood director living in Brentwood, there's always going to be family dysfunction out there. And for some reason, that thought kind of is grounding for me. I actually am kind of like, well, maybe that keeps us together. Compared to, if you come from a blue collar background or a white collar background, or you're a multimillionaire or you're living on the street, there's dysfunction in families sometimes. And usually it's not that bad that where it leads to murder, or alleged murder, but here it is. And it's something we all have to contend with, from on one level or the other. And I feel compassion for everyone involved. I feel, compassion definitely for the victims, for Rob and his wife, Michelle. May they rest in peace. For their surviving children. And also for the alleged perpetrator, Nick. And what can you say? Why would you feel bad for him? Well, when you allegedly murder your parents, you're not exactly a happy guy. You're not exactly the happiest of all campers. And obviously he was going through a lot, and he's been struggling with addiction since he was 15. I can only imagine what he's going through now. So yeah, I'm going to feel bad for him too, along with everybody else. So that's all I got to say about that, as far as, what happened and how I feel about that. So just talking about Rob and his filmography, All in the Family, Meathead, Michael Spivak. I love his arguments, his character's arguments with Archie, played by the great Carol O'Connor. It reminded me of arguments I had with my grandfather, where I was idealistic and liberal as a teenager and in college, and we just bicker about all the things that they bickered about, pretty much. And my grandfather he was technically my step-grandfather, but he was really my grandfather. I loved the guy, I really loved him. He was kind of like J.R. Ewing. He was from Dallas, Texas. Good old boy, hey boy, this is how it's gonna be, blah, 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 yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. He was that kind of guy. And he was an investor, and he taught me about the stock market a little bit. Wish I kind of retained more, actually, but he did teach me, and that was nice. He kind of took me under his wing a little bit and showed me how that works. And I haven't really been investing since, but we'll see in the future. I don't know. I'm not like a Forbes guy, I work for a university and I do this, and I'm a pretty liberal guy. But I also believe in investing wisely. So I'm looking to change some things in my financial repertoire. So anyway, he was a money guy, and he was being raised in the South. He was like Archie. Now, Archie was a New Yorker, but they both had that kind of generational bigotry or naivete, if you will, like where it's like they weren't hateful really. They were just kind of like ignorant is the best way to describe it. Some things came across as hateful though. And so when I would argue with my grandfather, it always reminded me of the arguments that Michael, Meathead, had with Archie. And they really just rang true for me. And I'm sure a lot of other people at the time, I'm sure it rang true for them as well. Those were such poignant arguments, especially during that time and place in the early to mid 70s, late 70s. Yeah, I mean, it was just an interesting time to be alive. I mean, you had a lot of things to argue over. Nixon, the Vietnam War, Johnson, the Vietnam War, coming forward to the 70s, feminism, all the things that surrounded feminism, things that certain conservative people couldn't understand, things that a lot of younger generations were trying to push. And this was the boomer generation. These were the boomers back then. It's weird how you see generations today. I mean, you have boomers kind of, they're the old folks now. They're almost like the squares, and they're kind of knocking heads with the millennials and Gen Z and, these kids today, and we never thought that we'd see this generation of the baby boomers going, who brought in the Beatles, and they pride themselves on bringing in the Beatles and accepting and embracing the Beatles and fighting the Vietnam War and, fighting for women's rights and the civil rights and all rights for all. I mean, now a lot of them did sell their souls in the 80s and became yuppies. So they went from being hippies to yuppies, and some people say, well, that's just growing up. Other people say, well, that's losing your soul. What is it? I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of the two. Anyway, I love that character, and he made us all think. Good old Meathead. I love Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap was a great film. I have not seen the second one. A couple of my friends saw it when they were down in LA, and they loved it. Spinal Tap 2, Electric Boogaloo. Just kidding. I love saying Electric Boogaloo after talking about after uttering the second title of a franchise. It just cracks me up. The Princess Bride, 1987. That movie was okay to me. Because, my Deadly Eyes review, there's that one giant rat scene, so that's the one that always sticks out for me. I don't think it really sticks out for everybody else, but that's the one that kind of always kind of freaked me out, even though the rat looks pretty fake, but it's still, whatever. Kind of a creepy thing to have happen to you. A giant rat just sort of attacks you in the middle of the forest. But, I do remember watching the film. I think we watched it in school, like the last day of school for some reason. It was somehow educational for some reason. So, yay, Princess Bride. When Harry Met Sally, my favorite film of his. Just hands down, just a great rom-com. The king of rom-coms. From everything from I'll Have What She's Having to just the leads doing their thing. It was great having Carrie Fisher in there, she had some good acting chops. It was nice to see her branch out from Leia, especially at that point in her career. I always compare When Harry Met Sally to Annie Hall, and they're really two different films. I mean, Annie Hall was a great rom-com too, but I think that this movie is more relatable to most people. Because to relate to Annie Hall, you have to really relate to Woody Allen's neurosis. And boy, is he neurotic sometimes. But this, Billy Crystal isn't quite as neurotic. There's a little neurosis there, but he's not that bad. And, well, of course, Sally, she's quite neurotic in her own. Meg Ryan plays neurotic pretty well in this, especially when she's ordering a meal. I'll have this on the side and blah, 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 blah. And I like it just like this and yada, yada, yada. It was just, that was some good comedic neurosis for you. A Few Good Men. He got to direct Jack Nicholson. You Can't Handle the Truth. Great. Politically, very liberal, as are a lot of Hollywood elites out there. But he was praised by people like James Woods recently for, he's willing to have a conversation, Do I agree with him politically? No. But at least he's willing to listen to you and willing to listen to the other side. So it's not just like, okay, I have to live in my bubble and screw you, So I think Donald Trump's comments on him were quite unnecessary, actually. Beyond unnecessary. I don't know what kind of a tough guy he thought he was being by saying that, but I'm disappointed in that. And as a liberal myself, I've kind of given Trump a lot of breaks on certain things, which pisses off my fellow liberals sometimes. We kind of get into it over that a little bit. That's for a different discussion, though. But, I try to tell people why he got elected and what us Democrats could learn from that. And to me is, don't be a self-serving politician. Don't be part of the status quo. And so many Democrat politicians are deep into the status quo. And we need to branch out of that. To certain people, that guy seems human. Anyway, I'm talking about that, and I didn't want to talk about that. So I'm going to stop talking about that now. All I'm saying is, us Dems, who we elect, we can do better. So, on that note, I just wanted to give him just the proper tribute and just let people know that I really admire his work, and I think that he's just a great director. He was a great director. I thought his acting was really good. Again, Meathead, a great character. His director character in This is Spinal Tap was great. Marty DeBurgi, great, love it. He seemed very authentic there. I love the line, I first discovered this band at a club called the Electric Banana. Don't try to find it, it's no longer there. Anyway, just a great line. So, shout out to Rob Reiner, and rest in peace, both Rob and Michelle. May God be looking down on you, and may you help us maybe find a little peace in this holiday season, since you are now one of the angels. So, to Rob and Michelle. On that note, let's switch gears to Daycare. Okay, so I have a good friend that I work with, and we watch the quad every day. We take a couple breaks to debrief, and we do a couple laps around the quad. And he likes to visit his 1.5-year-old son. He's close to 2 now, but not quite 2. And there's a little observation room where parents can kind of come in. It's like a two-way mirror deal, like you're like looking at people to line up, and they can see, you can see them, but they can't see us. It's not exactly soundproof, so we have to be quiet when we're commenting on, oh, look at those guys, or whatever, But it's endearing to watch 1.5 to almost 2-year-olds interact with each other, because there's absolutely no self-awareness whatsoever. His son just walks up to someone and goes to their head, and it just giggles, just with that goofy grin on his face, and it's priceless. It's like, how did we stop being so? When did we start being so self-aware? Well, I mean, the answer is obvious, because adults over the years from childhood to now said, hey, don't do that. It's weird. Stop being weird. And so we kind of stopped being weird, and we stopped embracing our playful inner child. Oftentimes in therapy, you hear of your wounded inner child, but there's also your playful inner child. That one also deserves some attention. And I think we can learn something from these toddlers just running amok, Jim Gaffigan once compared Daycare to showing up at a bar at 2 a.m. You got people just kind of just waddling about. Some people are more coordinated than others. And, some people are like, we used to be best friends, but not anymore. And he looked at me funny, so I punched him in the face. I need more juice. Just to paraphrase his bit. It's a brilliant bit. I love that. But yeah, it's true. It's very true. And I'm not saying that we should totally not be self-aware. But we could lose a little bit of our self-awareness and just be humans, I think. There's a happy medium to be had there. So I think it would be good for us to embrace each other's creative side, and to understand that it's okay to dance like no one's watching sometimes, And that's what these kids do. And it's just fabulous. It's fantastic. I love it. So those are just my thoughts, random thoughts on Daycare, and a little tribute to Rob Reiner. And I hope everyone's having a very Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, Happy holiday season. And life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived, so live it. Enjoy. Catch you next time.